I'm David Flint, and I'm in the process of interviewing Rick Brown, who was our director, ACM's director in Melbourne, in Victoria, also really the national strategist and also the major editor of a very important book, which was published during the referendum. And we're discussing his role during the referendum. That's the 1999 referendum for a republic. But going more broadly to your work, you worked for the last 10 years of his life, I understand it, with a man who played a fascinating role, I think, in the history of Australia, and is indeed a fascinating man. And I've only read about him and read what he said and seen what he said. I never met him, but I think he was really a very important person in the development of Australia, and a very strong anti-communist when communism was a significant threat. And I'm just wondering, Rick, did he have a particular view on the constitutional system? Did he express any opinions about the constitutional monarchy?
David, well, as you know, I spent 10 years working with Bob for the last 10 years of his life. But we never specifically discussed the question. I think one can infer his views reasonably accurately, and I'm very careful about it because I really abhor those who basically speak on behalf of the dead. And lots of people do it.
Yes, Amanda Vanstone, for example, said that if Menzies were alive today, he'd be a Republican. All I said was, well, how does she know?
Well, let's digress. It goes back to your previous question. The question is, if Menzies were alive today, would he be pre-selected by the Liberal parties, which I think the answer is no. Because by today's standards, he would have been seen as a socialist, quite seriously, because he supported mixed economies, not free markets. And if he were alive today, I mean, the question is whether he would want to be a member of the Liberal Party. And I suspect the answer to that question is no as well. But anyway, but his daughter could answer those questions. But no, I think it's just as aside. It's a very interesting question to ask. What does the Liberal Party of today have in common with Robert Menzies? I actually think that's a very interesting question. But going back to Bob,
that's Bob Santamaria rather than Bob Menzies.
Well, as is a matter of record, Bob was opposed to totalitarianism. I mean, obviously. I think on the democracy front, he would have fallen into what I call the Churchillian position, the worst form except for all the others. I think though, a conversation with Bob around this probably would have been much more interesting. Bob was a great admirer of Lee Kuan Yew, and I think there would be many who would argue that if the form of democracy in Singapore had taken the form it takes, say, in Australia or the United States, that Singapore would not be where it is today. And I think there would be a lot of people who would mount that argument, and certainly Lee Kuan Yew mounted it. I think, though, and so if you'd put to Bob the notion of benevolent dictatorship, it would have been an interesting discussion. I mean, I think if you'd put to Bob that, in fact, Robert Menzies was actually a benevolent dictator, and by that I mean somebody who was a dictator in terms of 3 years, and every 3 years got his dictatorship re-endorsed by the people. he'd have been sympathetic. Well, I think he would have understood that argument as well. But I think the difficulty with dictatorships in any form, benevolent or otherwise, and it's more a dictatorship problem than a totalitarian state problem, is succession. What is the mechanism for handing over? That's the fundamental flaw. You see the problem in Oman now. I mean, the Emir of Oman is really another Lee Kuan Yew, but he's never married. And so there's a succession challenge in Oman. But I think so. In the end, he'd have come to the position of democracy in the form we have it. But I don't think. I mean, I think for him it would have been a discussion and simply getting there by ruling out all the other options.
Good. Well, thank you very much. That's a very interesting examination of the views of a very significant Australian who played a major role. In fact, I think much of Menzies' tenure can be explained, obviously, on the preferences offered by the Democratic Labour Party. Which
Arthur Corwell thought so.
Yes. No doubt. Good. Well, thank you.